Hi. What was the most significant event in the automotive world in the last few months? What were the most interesting cars I reviewed in 2025 and why? Also, I'll give you my quick impressions of several cars which I really don't think deserve full reviews, but I had to drive them anyway, because I became the World Car Awards juror. Nobody expected this one coming, including yours truly. In my opinion, the most significant automotive event in 2025 had at least two acts, but it boils down to one: EVs are no longer the unavoidable future. Say what? First, in June 2025, US President Donald Reciprocal Tariff Trump revoked California's mandate to impose its own emission standards and the requirement to sell only Teslas after 2035. The significance of this decision is that California is the biggest lefty car market in the land of the pickup truck, and several other commie states followed California's standard, forcing car makers to look into electrification of their fleets. Now, they don't have to. This made the European car makers soil their undergarments. They've just only started making EVs which not only move about, but also one could go as far as to say they aren't absolutely terrible, and now the rednecks say, "Oil, yeah, again?" So much for fast return on investment, as the Europeans now have to develop both powertrain technologies. Car makers on the old continent were saved by the bell when the European Commission decided to back out from the 2035 ban on combustion engine cars in the EU. And instead of reducing CO2 emissions by 100%, reduction has to amount to only 90%, which still sounds like a lot, but it opens doors to some more creative greenwashing. While I get that EVs are becoming mostly good mobility appliances, somehow I cannot imagine young men excited by posters of electric toys hanging over their beds. That's not to say there are no electric toys which bring excitement, but those are mainly reserved for the bedroom. As far as electric cars go, the really exciting ones are usually very expensive or remain in the concept phase. And now a brief recap of the most interesting cars I reviewed in 2025. Bear in mind, interesting doesn't equal good. Because in January I drove the Peugeot E5008. This one is a poster child for European Commission's decision to give the European car makers a break. I mean, I get it. Career politicians spend most of their time being chauffeured at the taxpayer's dime, and therefore their touch with reality may be somewhat loose. But even they probably have a couple of kids by now who are old enough to start their own families, and they're asking their politician parents how on earth are they supposed to drive to a holiday destination. Not in a Stellantis EV. You get the grandkids for 2 weeks and we're buggering off to Bali. And that's a serious argument. In February, I left my cat with the grandparents. They didn't do anything wrong and they love cats. And I flew to Dubai to drive the Toyota Land Cruiser, which isn't in fact a Land Cruiser, but that's a long story which I encourage you to watch. I drove in the desert and in the mountains. Emirates is one of those countries where you can still do that. In March, I was in Paris to see Jaguar's controversial Type 00 concept, and also to listen to Jaguar's reps shamelessly explaining their clients own many cars, including some of which have normal powertrains, so an electric GT is more than enough to potter around Monaco. In April, I landed back on planet Earth and made myself a cuppa in the Hyundai Inster, probably the most sensible city EV currently on sale. And what about the Citroën EC3? I'm glad you asked. This car is the proof that Stellantis needs to stay in its own galaxy, because there is no place for them down here. Apparently, the 1.2 PureTech dissolving Cumbelt problem has been resolved, but their EVs are also shit. The early Nintendo interface isn't even retro-nostalgic, and get this. They're putting in the same sat-nav regardless of the powertrain, so you have to pay for an app to get route planning with charging stops. In June, I finally managed to get my paws on the Renault 5. I know by now everyone and their mother reviewed the car. I was in contact with the Polish PR probably since autumn 2024, but when it comes to EVs, press cars are first usually sent to markets where such cars actually sell, and Poland isn't one of them. So, while Harry Metcalf's Renault review was one of his top videos in 2025, mine got substantially less views than a facelifted Clio. Spoiler alert, I think it would be a much better car with even the tiniest gas engine. What works well as an EV, though, is that Microlino bubble car. Yes, it's expensive, not particularly luxurious, and it has a limited range, but it's been a while since I had a press car in which I would invent errands just to drive it for a bit. How cool is that? Audi's back on the channel after a long, it's complicated relationship status, and the PR manager got the boot in 2024. So, the SQ5 is interesting, but even more interesting was the person who watched it and sent me an invitation. More about that in a moment. In September, Mercedes surprised me in a good way. My previous experience with Mercedes EVs was such that I began refusing their EQ press cars, but the CLA tickled my curiosity and I booked one for a test drive. If you're in a market for a compact electric sedan, I suggest you give this one a test drive as well. Now I'm waiting for the shooting brake, but I want the ICE version. I hope Mercedes won't go the mini way, where the petrol engines are so subdued that the EVs actually feel better. Better minis, not necessarily better EVs. Mazda 6e turned out to be a better EV, better than the Mazda MX-30, because it's underneath actually a Chinese Chang'an, but it looks sexy, the interior is elegant, and most features are now controlled from the screen. So if you feel Musk's products are no longer sexy, see what I did there? Mazda is almost like Tesla. Actually, no, it's not. It's nice and it has a mediocre range. An alternative to the Mazda 6e is the Toyota Camry, which is hybrid, and it's unavailable in most of Western Europe. What happened to vaguely affordable sedans, right? Here I'll circle back to the Audi review because it's what got me a ticket to THRU and I got to drive old Bentleys. The Bentley team is reasonable and they understand their customers need to have a choice, so hold off the EVs and let's go the PHEV route. Also, I'd love to own one of those 80s Turbo Rs. In December, I was in Spain to drive the new BMW iX3. Remember what I said, the good Mini, not necessarily a good EV? Well, the iX3 is a great EV, but not necessarily a great BMW. Okay, and now let's get to those cars which I don't think deserve full reviews on the channel. So why did I drive them in the first place? At the beginning, I mentioned I was selected to join the World Car Awards jury. I'm Poland's second juror, after my colleague Pertin, who also has a YouTube channel, to which I'll link below. Anyway, it's an honor to be among several dozen of top motoring journalists from around the world, but it's not all fun and games, as I have to drive a number of cars. There are probably about 90 of them for the 2026 World Car of the Year edition. I won't tell you how many exactly because some compete only in certain categories, whereas others are in several categories. So, for example, there is the main World Car of the Year and World Electric Car of the Year, and so on. Anyway, the news that I was selected came in autumn and it was too late for me to fly to California to drive the cars, so I decided to arrange some sort of short test drives in Poland, as many as possible, to get some driving time before the first round of voting. I drove about 15 models, mainly Chinese. Of these, I'll do a full review of the Jaguar T2, and also the Volvo ES90 deserves more time. As for the rest, here's my brief take. Beijing BJ30E. I like that it exists, but it feels more like a sophomore end-of-term project. It needs a lot of work, especially on ride and handling, assist features and soundproofing. Geely EX5 is another generic Chinese EV. It's got a good interface for a Chinese car destined for Europe. Average everything else. Jaecoo 5, it's got a Land Rover Freelander meets Range Rover Evoque vibe to it. Unfortunately, the engine and the gearbox talk to each other in different Chinese dialects. Also, soundproofing is a letdown. Driver assist features are subpar, as in most Chinese cars, unfortunately. It's a shame because I like the way it looks and feels, but only when the car is parked. Oh, and the EV version is even worse. KGM Action, which used to be Sangyong Action, its only saving grace is the suspension, which shines when it's on really bad roads. Other than that, steer clear of it. Leapmotor B10, At first, it feels more expensive than it really is, but upon closer inspection, you realize it's built to a price point. Overall, it's great value except for the seats, which for me are a deal breaker. Now, the MG S5 EV is an easy sell as long as the test drive doesn't include highways. There's a good reason it's cheap, the driver aids are mediocre, connectivity is buggy, and the menu is complicated. The Omoda 9 features a generic exterior, but the interior feels last-gen Lexus luxurious. There are also a lot of physical buttons to supplement the mediocre infotainment system. It's comfortable and spacious, but visibility and soundproofing compromise this otherwise premium-feeling car. I've also driven the Opel Grandland, which felt like a pre-production model, the Skoda Superb, which is too expensive even though it's miles better than most Chinese cars I've driven so far, and the Subaru Forester, which is let down by its Euro-spec powertrain. The first round of voting for the World Car Awards ended on 29th of December, and the shortlist will be announced on 6th of January. I'll keep you posted, and next month I'll tell you what's happening next on this juror life of mine. Meanwhile, next week, join me for the review of the new Nissan Leaf, which is one of the few EVs which I actually like. You can become a channel member and watch it early, or I'll see you next week. If you like my sarcastic, down-to-earth, and possibly mildly amusing car reviews, join me every Friday at 3 p.m. Central European Time, and don't forget to subscribe and like this video, as it helps me with the YouTube algorithm. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.